I've always been told that you have to own a house, that homeownership builds wealth, and that every rich person owns property, and that's basically how you get rich. And it wasn't until the last several years that I realized that that was a major lie. So in today's video, I'm going to share some common myths about homeownership and the lies that we've been told since we were kids. Imagine this: the American dream with a white picket fence. It's a popular and iconic symbol that embodies a particular vision of success and stability in American culture. It represents the idealized suburban lifestyle of the mid-20th century, characterized by home ownership, marriage with 2 kids and a dog named Spot, harmony, and a sense of security. Despite its exclusivity and associations with conformity, it's something we still sought after for a long time, especially if you are an older millennial or a zennial, to be accurate. This imagery became especially prominent in the post-World War II era during a period of widespread suburbanization and economic growth in the United States. The suburban lifestyle represented by the white picket fence came to be seen as the epitome of the American dream, signaling success, upward mobility, and social status, and we wanted it. So many things have changed over the years, and as homeownership gets more and more difficult to obtain, the more I realize that this is not for everyone. So is homeownership for you? But first, let's talk about the first myth, which is that it's always better to buy than to rent. While homeownership can offer financial benefits like equity buildup and tax deductions, renting is not always a more financial fit for every single situation, especially if someone plans to move a lot or the costs of owning, such as maintenance, property taxes, and insurance. Those things can outweigh the benefits. You also lose out on the flexibility of renting and the freedom of not having to pay for maintenance, coming and going as you please, and a list of a ton of other things. The second myth is that buying a house is always a good investment. While real estate can appreciate over time, it's not always guaranteed, and the costs associated with homeownership, like the mortgage interest, the property taxes, maintenance, homeowner insurance, which is through the roof in Colorado, all these things can offset potential gains in home value. So you think that your house is gaining in value, and it likely is, but with all these other expenses on top of it, especially if you buy an older house that needs a ton of work, sometimes it's not worth it. And as I reflect on all the updates needed in our house right now after several years, I'm starting to see money draining at a fast rate. Our deck needs updating. The water heater and the furnace needs some love, and we could use some fresh exterior paint. And everything is so overinflated these days that this is going to cost a lot more than we initially planned for when we bought the house. Now, I live in Colorado, and homes here have a pretty steady pace of increase in equity depending on the area. Gained over the years, but if you're not going to be here long, it's probably not worth it to own your property as your primary residence. Years ago, it was totally worth it because oftentimes your mortgage was less than what you were paying for rent, but now it's flopped the other way around, and renting is cheaper than buying a house. And so you don't even have time to build up that equity. And if you're going to be moving in 2 or 3 years, unless you plan on renting that property out and it's a pretty good rental property, you might want to think about not moving forward with that purchase. The third myth is that you don't need a huge down payment to buy a home. While it is true that you don't need a huge down payment, like 20% down, but if you don't, there are consequences for it, like a higher monthly payment or hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest payments over the years that nobody wants to show you. You'll also be subject to private mortgage insurance when you don't put that 20% down if it's not a VA loan. Now, when it comes to that 20% down, it removes the private mortgage insurance pretty much in all, if not almost all cases. And that private mortgage insurance can be up to $200 per month. And so you sacrifice that, but not only that, the higher mortgage payment per month. And then, of course, the higher the mortgage payment, the higher the interest rate. So you do feel it, and you will reap that repercussion of not putting a down payment. Now, the fourth myth is that your home always increases in value. And I'm actually going to backtrack on that one. This is actually not a myth in my market. It depends on the market, really. I sell real estate in Colorado Springs, and over time, most homes in decent condition have definitely increased in value. Some take a lot longer than others, but they're definitely much more now than they've ever been, and they are on track to continue to do so. So anybody that says that a house is not going to appreciate in value, I mean, look at the houses the last 10 years, the last 20 years. Of course, they've appreciated in large amounts. And a lot of people have actually paid off because they've been in their homes for 20, 30 years. They have their homes paid off. And right now, they're not paying anything. And if they wanted to move out and rent it out to someone else, they could totally do that. And so you want to be thinking long term. If you're not going to keep the house or be in that neighborhood, or maybe you do want to keep it and rent it out, even if you're breaking even for a short period of time, it might be worth it long term, because what I'm seeing now is a lot of elderly people that have to leave their homes and because they're renting, and they don't have anywhere to go. So it's either pay now or pay later, right? So even the ugly homes no one would even consider buying 10 years ago are selling today. While real estate values generally tend to appreciate over the long term, they can also decline or stagnate due to factors like economic downturns, changes in the local housing market, or shifts in neighborhood desirability. So say like what was once a very popular upcoming neighborhood, now that they've built all these commercial buildings around it, nobody wants to live there anymore. Or maybe there's an airport that was put in there, and so it becomes less desirable. And so that might change the value. But also look what happened when interest rates went up, like tripled almost. Homes were sitting on the market a lot longer. Home sellers are not getting as much as they wanted for their house or how much that home is actually worth. So they're having to decrease their prices just to get it sold. So just kind of a couple different examples when it comes to values changing over time, but long term, for sure, definitely. That has been the evidence over the decades. Now, it's essential to consider the risks and uncertainties when it comes to real estate investments. So if you need help planning around that, please feel free to give me a call, text, or email. We'd be happy to help you navigate through all of that. But it's so important to count the cost. If you've seen the movie Fun with Dick and Jane, you know that anything can happen. You can lose your job and the world could come crumbling down.
I'm not sure, but it seems that we may be in a little bit of a pickle, Dick.
You've heard it said that homeownership is a hedge against inflation, and I strongly believed that until 2023. More on why I don't believe that anymore later in this video, but people who plan around the risk will be successful. The problem is a lot of people don't budget for these situations, and then they end up in a world of hurt financially because they bought at the top of their budgets, and some even lose their homes due to a lot of these unforeseen circumstances. Now, when it comes to a potential housing crash, I honestly don't see that happening. Corporate investors want all the properties. Once you sell that home to them, they're going to be in control of the market, because these large corporate investors, they're not going to sell it back to the people, the communities, these middle class families. No, they're going to want to hang on to it because they understand the value of properties. And so that's why I still encourage home ownership with the whole rent everything, own nothing and be happy and not own property. Well, that'll work until you get to a certain age and now you realize how much you've spent on rent when you could have put that towards an investment. So there's pros and cons to all of it. When I mentioned earlier that I don't believe that homeownership is a hedge against inflation anymore, is because it has inflated so much that our taxes have gone up 40 to 50%, and homeowners insurance has gotten out of control. Seriously, it's just way too expensive or unattainable in certain areas. So yes, these monthly home ownership costs are rising higher and higher with things that are, getting more and more expensive. It's not as much as a hedge as it has been in the past. And so hopefully we move out of that phase, but it's hard to know what is going to happen in the future. But if you do need help with real estate, please feel free to give me a call again, or text me. Text and email is probably the best way to reach me. And if you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, please make sure you are subscribed. I'm always posting videos about real estate and Colorado living, and would love it if you could like this video, and I'll see you on the next one, the one that is popping up next on the screen. YouTube thinks that you'll probably like it, so watch that, and I'll see you on the next video.